So, this is your debut at the Royal Opera House.
Yes, my first and maybe last time.
Unlikely so far. But how did it come by that you chose this piece?
Kasper asked me, like, I think 4 years ago, when he just almost, no, I think it was 5 years, which is when he first started. And I said, great, I'd love to come and do a show. I said, but there are a number of conditions. That, firstly, it was a non-repertoire piece.
Okay.
So I said, I think I don't want to make my Royal Opera House debut with a Mozart or a Wagner or Strauss or a Puccini, because there's just too much pressure for a director to do those pieces here in this house as your first production. And secondly, I said I want a piece which is an ensemble piece that has the best singers that we can get in the world, but not necessarily stars, because then it means that everyone can be here for the 7 weeks of rehearsal. And I don't have the problem because they have to fly off to Salzburg or Paris or whatever to do concerts or other gigs or phone in sick for 3 weeks or send their understudies or whatever happens in some other houses. I said the third condition was a piece that Covent Garden had never done.
Well,
so those three were my conditions, and Kasper said, oh great, and he knew that I had an idea. He said, so what do you want to do? And I said, the nose. So
when did you first come across the piece?
When I was at university, at Melbourne University. I was studying music history, and I had started to direct opera at Melbourne University, and I was searching for pieces to do. Started off with Monteverdi, with Orfeo, and then I had done La Callisto by Cavalli, and I thought, okay, enough with the Baroque. I need another piece. So I looked around the music library. I knew I loved Shostakovich since I was a teenager. I actually had known about listened to Lady Macbeth before I listened to The Nose. And I found the score, and of course it was impossible to do at Melbourne University, but I looked at it and went, wow. And actually, through that, I then started to read Gogol, because I hadn't actually hadn't read Gogol before.
So Gogol came after the...
Yeah, I was obsessed with Kafka when I was a teenager. That was my man, my go-to man, for teenage teenage Jewish gay angst in Melbourne.
Why do you think this piece is so rarely performed? Thank you for bringing it here, by the way.
Well, I mean, there's nearly 80 named roles. So you have to cast it with 33 soloists who double or triple, or in some cases, I don't know what you call 5 roles. And then you have the chorus. And then in our case, we have dancers also, and a tap dancing boy, which we'll get onto in a moment, I'm sure.
Goodness.
So that it becomes a very logistically expensive, and most opera houses can't afford to do it. It's very surprising that Covent Garden said yes to it, because you could only really do this piece if you have a very large ensemble, and Covent Garden have to bring that ensemble in. So it's logistically very complicated. Secondly, Shostakovich makes a director's life a fabulous nightmare, because he is very cinematic in how he deals with the action. So he'll have an interlude or a scene, and then it's cut straight into the next scene, and there's no time in the score to get sort of scene changes, or he'll cut in the middle of a scene. It's very cinematic in that respect. So of course that's not a problem for me. That's a wonderful challenge.
Yes, that's a challenge.
And I think the third thing is that the piece is very, very, very hard to not just sing and perform, but to sort of sell. The piece has so many challenges, not just musically, but scenically and psychologically. It's very, very hard. But what I want to say was that the productions that I've seen he is on face level a very unsympathetic man. He's a dandy. He's obsessed with social status. He's vain. He talks endlessly about himself. He's ambitious. He's dirty. He smells. So on face value, he's this sort of, you know, stinky, herring-stained, onion-stained, sort of Russian, grotesque sort of official. And you have to make that man into not necessarily likable, but understandable, and then be shocked that you actually feel something for him, because his predicament is a sort of universal predicament, which is, you know, what would it be like if you didn't have a nose?
Loss,
you know?
yes. How do you
So
deal
it's
with
about fear and loss. And of course, they're the two great motivators for a lot of drama. So
absolutely,
it's there in the piece.
How have you entered that design world? How I mean, the city, I mean, the story itself is saturated in city life, all the different spaces, the cathedral, the apartment, the bedroom, the newspaper office. How do you begin to put that in one space?
Well, firstly, I work with a team of different designers. This production is designed by one of my wonderful collaborators, Klaus Grünberg, who also does the lighting. And, you know, my designers and I work on spaces. You're never going to get St. Petersburg in my show anyway. You're never going to get a literal representation of the theatre. It's impossible to put the city on the stage in a way that you would do brilliantly in a film, you know, where you can put a city on the stage. So the last thing you want is to say, we're putting the city on stage and everything's rolling around on wheels and it all looks like a city. That's not the point. The point is that you have to feel that it's the city of the lead character. So you have to feel what it's like for him to go through it. So it's private spaces and there's public spaces, but they're just spaces.
What is happening here?
I didn't want to show this, but your marketing department said I had to.
It's a good thing to see, I've got to be honest. I mean,
so the biggest challenge with the nose is how do you represent a production in which a man loses his nose? Practically,
yes.
Because he's only one little scene where he's getting shaved, and then the third scene, he wakes up and he's got no nose. So, you know, the first thing you have to solve is, what are you going to do? And I think all the productions I've seen, they've done symbolic nose loss, or they've painted it black or whatever. And I said, well, why don't we go the other way? Why don't we give everyone in the cast noses? So they've made, like, I think we have 100 and something people in the cast.
Goodness, yes.
Everyone has a nose, and when he loses his nose, he doesn't have the big nose. So we haven't. You have everyone has a latex nose, which was a morphed thing of Barbra Streisand's nose. And it's just true. Bookie Schiff and I did it. It's two things. You know, it has to be a Jewish nose. I said, you know, so it's Barbra Streisand meets one of those terrible Nazi anti-Semitic Jewish banker caricatures from a newspaper in Berlin, and we morphed that. So we morphed Barbara and a sort of anti-Semitic Jewish banker, and we came up with that. And
a lot of them.
No, that's different. I'll get to that in a moment. So everyone wears these noses. So everyone's got the same nose, which makes it even weirder. And he loses his nose, and then there's a scene in which the nose runs around, and because I wanted dance to be quite an important element, we decided that the little nose for the first part of the show would be played by a young British tap dancing boy, because we've got a tap dancing nose in this show. And so this poor boy dreamed of Billy Elliot, but in fact he's just playing a nose. And then it grows into a sort of phantasmagoric scene where you will see the world's first Busby Berkeley tap dancing nose scene, where they tap dance in these noses. And I'm telling you, I don't know how they do it, because you can't really see out of it, and you can't look at your colleagues, so they have to all do it by some. But there's a sort of Busby Berkeley chorus line of hairy-legged male noses.
I mean, you can't sell a show better.
Yeah, well, that's worth the price of ticket alone, and that's not even with music, so, you know.
Barrie, we have incredibly come to the end of our Insight
Just beginning.
I know, we could be here for another 5 hours.